Hi, hello everybody. It's Adrian Hanks here, bringing you a webinar, and I want to bring in a bit of the esoteric flavor with this webinar. So this is all about thinking, feeling, and willing, and the threefold human being. So welcome. So I'm just going to jump across to my PowerPoint. If you just give me a moment to do that, we're just going to share. And here we go. So the threefold human being: thinking, feeling, and willing. So I want to share a little bit with my main spiritual teacher, has been now for over 30 years, and that's Rudolf Steiner, who was the one that really formulated this idea from his studies and his work, all the way back to the ancient Greeks and Mesopotamia and all those other places, and the work he did with the German philosopher Goethe, and he formulated this idea of the thinking, feeling, and willing as being part of the threefold human being. And I'll explain more about that as we go through this. So Rudolf Steiner, born in 1861 and passed away in 1925. So he died quite early. He didn't really live to a great old age. So he actually formed the Anthroposophical Society. He was in the Theosophical Society for many years, and he was actually the head of the Theosophical Society in Berlin for many years. And then he had some difference of opinions with Andy Besant and some of the other people around at that time in the Theosophical Society. I won't go into that too deeply, but he decided to step away from that and set up his own spiritual pathway, if you like, for people to follow, called the Anthroposophical Society. Now, anthroposophical is quite a big word, so let's break it down. Anthroposophy, which means the study of man, or the study of humankind, or the study of the wisdom of humankind. So it's quite a long word, and if you practice it, it'll roll off your tongue. Anthroposophical. Anthroposophical. It's not so easy, get a bit tongue-tied. So Rudolf Steiner, he was a high initiate, probably one of the highest initiates, certainly in the last few hundred years, and certainly of his time. And he was also a teacher and a great philosopher. And what he brought to us in the time he was here, and how I actually got introduced into the world of Rudolf Steiner, was actually through biodynamics, which is a form of farming and agriculture that's organic, but beyond that, it also brings in the elements of the stars and the planets and different certain things. It's quite an interesting and amazing study. I've been working with that now for over 30 years. So my introduction to Rudolf Steiner was through biodynamics, by going to a lecture in Tasmania in 1992. And I'd just bought a 7-acre property at the time in Tasmania, and it was just the perfect timing to deep dive into biodynamics and get my property certified organic. And then over the years, I've lectured and I've worked with farms with biodynamics, and it's just an incredible system. He also brought what we call spiritual science for humanity, art in various ways, eurythmy, which is a form of movement. And the best way to explain it is every movement, every sound, every vowel, every consonant has a connection to the planets or the stars. So he worked with a lady called Uta Wegman, and they brought this movement, this dance movement of eurythmy forward through speech and movement connected to the planetary sphere. So a very esoteric form of movement and dance. Then, of course, there's education with Steiner education, which most of you may have heard of. My children went to Steiner schools. Then he brought in medicine, anthroposophical medicine. And there's one quick story I'd like to share. There's a friend of mine who had really bad arthritis. She was like really crippled up. She was only in her 40s. She was doubled over. She used to horse ride. And then she started to take the anthroposophical medicine for arthritis, which is gold. So a bit like homeopathic, but it's anthroposophically made with gold. She was on that for about 6 or 7 months. Slowly, she came out of the crippling arthritis. and within 2 years she was riding a horse again. So you know, anthroposophical medicine, it does work. Then of course psychosophy, or psychotherapy, and I'll speak about that in a moment. He brought architecture. You can see in the bottom picture, that's some of Steiner's architecture. That's the Goetheanum in Switzerland, which is the home of anthroposophy, and much more he brought as well. So my connection, I started back in 1992, as I mentioned, with biodynamic agriculture. Later in years, I went on to do some teacher training. I thought I might become a Steiner teacher. So I did 1 year teacher training in the Steiner School in Melbourne, and then chose a different path. I've studied and worked with biodynamics, as I've mentioned. I joined the School of Spiritual Science in 1995. It's the esoteric school for people who were in the anthroposophical movement. So Rudolf Steiner gave lots of different lectures and talks and mantras and spiritual text that one follows when one's a member of the School of Spiritual Science. So I joined that in 1995, and I continue to study and work with that to this day. I've studied aspects of art, eurythmy, medicine, studied with psychosophy. So Steiner named his psychotherapy, or his work with humanity in that psychotherapeutic space, as psychosophy. And 20 plus years ago now, I started my training to become a counselor and psychotherapist in psychophonetics, which is an offshoot of Steiner's psychosophy. So I'm actually a counselor and psychotherapist based on Steiner's work, and I've been doing that for 20 years. So that's enough about me and Rudolf. So I want to dive in to the thinking, feeling, and willing. And how I'd like to begin that with you is to talk a little bit about the 12 senses. So Rudolf Steiner shared with us this really, really important information to understand, particularly if you're going to work with human development. And this is quite unique in terms of the understanding behind this. Steiner's the only one that really has ever come up with this concept of having multiple senses beyond the 5 senses, which is what most people working in different fields, they talk about the 5 senses. Well, we work with 12. In fact, I work with 13 because I like to bring in an extra one, and that's the sense of humor. So I do love to bring in the sense of humor. So before we dive into the thinking, feeling, and willing a little bit more directly, I want you to take a little look at this chart. And you can see in the thinking realm, we have the senses of hearing, thought, ego, and the word. And in the feeling realm, the rhythmic soul realm, we have sight, smell, warmth, and taste. Now, a lot of people say, well, surely sight, smell, and taste are around the headspace. No, they're not, because they're soul qualities. We actually work in that soul quality with them. So that's something a little bit different to contemplate. And then we go into the body, where we get into that willing space, into the limbs. And that's where we have touch, and we have balance, we have life, and we have movement. So let's just take the sense of balance for a moment. Because if you stand up and stand very still and put your arms out, you feel balance. You get a sense of balance. If you stand on one leg, you get a sense of balance. If you get a sense of living life, you get a sense of life. Move up into the soul realm, you get a sense of being warm or being cold. So this is quite unique to what we study in the anthroposophical realms, and it's really, really important. So I'm just going to jump back out of my share for a moment. So I just want you to contemplate that for a moment before I continue. I want you to contemplate yourself with your 12 senses. The senses around the headspace, the senses around the soul space or the sensory space, and then the sensing around the limb space, because it's a little bit more than the 5 senses. I just want you to contemplate that for a moment, that, we're quite an intrinsic human being with all those senses around us. Mostly we're unaware of those senses. So the sense of the ego, I just want to talk about that for a moment, because that's very unique. That's very unique, and most people don't really understand that one. So there's 2 aspects of the ego. There's my own ego, my self ego, and I can get a sense of where I'm at in that ego. By ego, I don't mean being big-headed or being, out there with a big, massive ego on stage. What I mean by that is my sense of beingness. So Steiner, a little bit unlike Freud, who talks about the ego with a small e. In Anthroposophy, we have ego with the big E, the capital E, which means sense of self. So it's a little bit different than the smaller ego aspect of Freud, just in case there's any confusion. So the big ego really means the sense of myself, my identity, or my I presence. So I can be aware of that internally and externally, but also I can be aware of other people's ego, other people's sense of beingness. And when we get into that space, particularly in psychotherapeutic work, and we get a sense of the other, that's a really amazing place to be, because then we meet on a deeper level. So that's one of the senses I just want you to contemplate for a moment. The sense of the other. When you meet somebody new, when you meet a friend, are you really sensing into who they are, into that sense of the other? So I said tonight would be about opening up, discovering new things, taking you on a little bit of a journey. So this is where we continue. So I'm just going to jump back into this again. So we've got the nervous system in the head and around the thinking. Yeah. We've got the rhythmic system of the soul and in the feeling realm. That's why we actually, smell is like a feeling. If you sniff and smell, it's not part of the head. It goes into the soul. Sight, our eyes. I know they're in the head, but they're connected to the soul. People often say, the gateway to the soul is through the eyes. And it's very true. Our taste, when we taste things, if I taste this water, I don't taste it intellectually. I taste it in my soul and in my limbs. If I touch something, I'm aware of that touch in the body and the balance in the body. So let's move on into the thinking realm. And I want to bring us down from the thinking realm, down and down and down and down from the cosmos, down into our beingness. So you may have heard, particularly in the Christian faith, we talk about the word, the muse, the sphere, the muse of the sphere, the word. In the beginning was the word. So from the cosmos, we get the word, or we get the vibration, or we get the sound. And when we open our mind, that's what we connect to. We connect to that cosmic wisdom. Cosmic wisdom. We hear, we feel, we sense the word, the vibration, the essence. Some say the essence of God, the essence of the universe, the essence of the cosmos. And then it comes down, through the mind, which is not tangible. We can't touch the mind. And then it drops into our thinking, into our thought process. So eventually it sort of comes down, and then we start to think. And I want you to contemplate for a moment what thinking is, what thought is. So if you have a thought, and I have a thought now, the thought is I'm thirsty. And I have a drink. But I'm aware of my thinking. I can become aware of that thought. So my question is, who or what is it that has that awareness? Who or what has that awareness of me knowing my thought, having my thought, being in my thinking? Who or what is that that's aware of that? I won't delve in that too deeply tonight. That's probably a whole nother webinar. And then, of course, it goes into the head space and into the brain. And then, the brain is tangible. We can take the brain and it's a tangible thing. We can cut it open. We can muck around with the brain. We cannot do that to the mind. We can't go into the mind. And then the brain takes us into that mental sphere, into the cognitive. And then we can start to rationalize and analyze and go left brain, right brain. And start to put things in different compartments and get into that mental space. And then what often happens when we have something coming through the realms into the mental space, into our beingness, It can be clouded sometimes with doubt, or is absolute clarity. So usually there's two things. We start to, doubt ourselves and doubt what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're experiencing, or we can have absolute clarity in that. And clarity of thinking, and this comes from Rudolf Steiner, clarity of thinking, pure thought, is one of the highest spiritual endeavors a man can reach. I'll say that again, quoting from Rudolf Steiner. Clear thinking is one of the highest endeavors of spirituality that man can reach when we have that absolute clarity of our thinking. It's quite a statement. And it also gives us an understanding and an idea of the power of thinking. And here's a little quote from Rudolf Steiner here. And I love this. Sounds are the echo of the harmony of the spheres, which man took into himself when he came down from the divine spiritual world into the physical world. So just read that for a moment for yourself. It's beautiful. You can contemplate that as a meditation over and over and over and over again, and just it fills my soul when I read some of those beautiful quotes. So let's just drop into the feelings now. We've spoken a little bit about the thinking, and now I want to bring us into the feeling realm. So the feelings, as I said before, they're all about our senses, and they live very much in that ether space. They live outside of us and they live inside of us. And when we work on those 12 senses, when we go deeper into the study of that, and I've been studying for many, many years, there are external senses and there's internal senses. Internal and external senses. And depending on whether it's an external or an internal sense, it'll have a different connection with us in our soul, in our sensory realm, in that feeling realm. And what a lot of people connect their feelings to is the heart. Often, people talk about heart intelligence. And the thing around the heart intelligence, yes, it's got an amazing, incredible resonance. It picks up around the feeling realm. But the heart itself, from the perspective I'm coming from while I'm speaking now, is not so much the heart that has the feelings, but the feelings live in the soul. And our connection to our soul from a physiological understanding perspective is around this region, around the heart. So one could say the heart is at the seat of the soul. The heart is at the seat of the soul. There's a little bit of a misconception sometimes around the heart and feelings, rather than the feelings being in the soul. There's just been a slight change of the language there. Rather than saying, my feelings are in my soul, people say the feelings are in my heart. And to some degree it's true, but a truer expression would be my feelings are in my soul and my heart is in my soul. I won't expand too much more on that, but I just want to give a little bit of a corrective around that not all feelings are in the heart, they're actually in the soul realm that we see as being around the heart space. Because there's a lot of study at the moment, a lot of measurements of the heart and the heartbeat and the heart realm radiance. But I wonder whether people started to measure the soul radiance rather than the heart radiance. It might be a little bit clearer. It's just a question to put out there, because a lot of people who work in the heart space, and I don't want to take that away from them, because it's beautiful work, but just to open the mind a little bit about, perhaps it's not just about the heart, perhaps it's soul work, the soul journey. I just want to throw that into the mix as well for you. And then, of course, we get into our emotions, because when we have a feeling, we can become emotive around that feeling. So difference between feelings and emotions. We have a feeling and then we emote that feeling. We get emotional about that feeling. I feel something inside, I feel anger, and then I express that anger through my emotion. Yeah, so we feel it and then we emote it. And then in that space of the feeling realm, one of the biggest things we can have in the soul is love. And there's, once again, people connect love to the heart. I'm suggesting we connect love a little bit deeper into the soul, into that sensory space. And we can have self-love, which is one of the highest forms of initiation work, I believe, on the planet, of truly loving oneself. It's a very, very challenging task indeed, to truly love oneself on all levels, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and all the other aspects of life. Can I truly stand in front of that mirror of myself and truly love myself? Can I love myself warts and all, as the saying goes? Very challenging. And sometimes an easier one to do is a little bit of self-hatred, self-loathing, a lack of self-love. And that's quite common for a lot of people. A lot of people. There are industries that thrive on self-hatred, self-loathing, not feeling good about oneself, not feeling that one is enough. The makeup industry, for one. It's huge. Billions and billions and billion dollars a day are spent because people don't feel enough. They don't think they're beautiful enough. They don't think they're this enough. And there's a sense of self-hatred in there, self-loathing, lack of self-care. If we can turn that around into self-love, that's an incredible journey. And the only way we can overcome the hatred is by love. Is by love. I just want to leave you there for a moment. The sense of feeling. So we've had thinking around the head region. We've had feeling around the soul region, the heart region. And here's another beautiful quote by my teacher, Rudolf Steiner. I'll read it and then you can have a moment of contemplation and read it for yourself. If we do not believe within ourselves this deeply rooted feeling that there is something higher than ourselves, we shall never find the strength to evolve into something higher. Because that's the love, isn't it? When we expand outside of ourselves and know there's something else, then we can come back to ourselves and know and have the strength to know that I am bigger, I am more, I am lovable. So I just want you to read that for yourself for a moment. Just read that for yourself. Thank you. A very beautiful bit of prose. So now we come to willing. Now we come into the body, into the physical world. Absolutely in the physical. And when I do my psychotherapeutic work with my clients, I like to start in the physical world. I like to get everything right in the physical world. The eating, the moving, the sleeping, the nutrition, the connection. And then when that's solid and we're cemented in that place and we have the foundation, then we can start doing the soul work and the feeling work and the emotional work and the relationship work. And then we can slowly expand then into that more spiritual aspect of work, into the purpose, into that more esoteric realm. But I like to get a good solid footing first before I move into that space with my clients. I like to make sure that, if people are working with me as a spiritual student and people come on board with that for me for sometimes months or years, I make sure that the body's ready. So we take things out of the body that don't help with the spiritual journey. We try and take away the drugs and, not all alcohol, but as much as we can, because it impedes the spiritual journey. So we just clean up the body. We try and get on a good, healthy diet, preferably organic or biodynamic. And it's like we prepare the physical temple. Then we can do the emotional work and the spiritual work without the body having to work too hard to just to be alive, to be healthy. Because if you're putting junk into your body has to work really hard to clean up every day. So rather than just coming in with a little broom, us come in with like a whole army of cleaners every single day to keep cleaning up the mess we keep putting into our body. So when we work on the physical body and clean it up, then we can do the other work. But it takes will. It takes will. It takes an urge to want to do that, because we get into habits. We get into addictions. We get into laziness. And it's only the will, only the urge, only the drive that's going to help us to change. We have to find that internally, the internal feeling of the will. It's a limbic, it's a physical aspect. We have to do that. We have to urge ourselves to do that. And sometimes it's damn hard work, damn hard to make changes, particularly physically. But we do, we get the limbs and we will it. This is why physical exercise is really good. You know, push-ups, pull-ups, dance, movement, yoga, running, walking. To get the will active, it's really, really important. Because then it comes down into the physical body and we can engage with our will. We can get things done when we have a will. And the challenging thing about humanity today around the will is a lot of things are automated. In the old days, one would have to open a door, climb the stairs, get up off the couch to turn the TV over. But everything is pretty much automated now. Push a button, whoop, get on an escalator, whoop. So the will is being lessened in humanity, big time. So we have to work hard. We have to put our will in to get the will. We really do. So I just want you to contemplate for a moment. Where in your life are you not in your will? Where you're not pushing and driving for that next level of something? Where some laziness, some apathy might be setting in for you. I know I have regions of my life where there's apathy, laziness, procrastination, and I have to find that will. And sometimes it's very, very difficult. So we get into the physical side of things, into the limb system. What happens in the will space is that's where we can find that fear, the fear of doing something. When we're in fear, we freeze. We don't stay physical, we freeze. And then we have to find the courage to unfreeze and to move forward. And the only antidote to fear is courage. We have to push through it, find that courage, to find that will, to drive through whatever that thing is that's stopping us doing something in our lives. So that's willing. So we've got thinking, feeling, and willing. And once again, I've got a beautiful quote from Rudolf Steiner here. The sun with loving light makes bright for me each day. The soul with spirit power gives strength into my limbs. In sunlight shining clear, I revere, O God, the strength of humankind, which thou hast planted in my soul, that I may with all my might may love to work and learn. From thee stream light and strength, to thee rise love and thanks. So I'll get you to read that for yourself for a moment. Because we need will. We need will to work and to learn. It takes will to pick up a book and really, truly study a book. I've written a book myself called Where Am I Right Now? Physically, Emotionally, Mentally, Spiritually. And in that book, there are quite a few exercises that I ask the reader to actually do. So it's not just a reading book of what to do, but it's also how to do. And I put exercises in the book. And I know from experience, I know from talking to people, I know from being in the psychotherapeutic space for 20 years, that when people pick up that book and they are asked to do an exercise, a great majority of people will not find the will to do that exercise. They will just continue reading the pages and leave that part out because there's some apathy, some laziness around actually doing what I'm asking in the book to do, the will. But when we find that will, when we engage in that will to do the work, to do the esoteric work, to do the personal development work, to do the relationship work, to do the spiritual work, it takes a great deal of will, but the results are incredible. But we have to find that strength. We've got to find that light through our spirit to find that. It's a very beautiful piece of prose. So I talked about three things in the thinking, feeling, and willing. I spoke about doubt, self-hatred, and fear. And in the anthroposophical stream, we talk about those three things as the three beasts that challenge humanity. And I mentioned previously the School of Spiritual Science. In that School of Spiritual Science, we work predominantly on 19 lectures that Rudolf Steiner gave, predominantly on the three beasts. The whole esoteric study we do in our personal and spiritual development is working to overcome these three beasts within humanity and also within ourselves. So Rudolf Steiner took this very, very seriously to the point where he developed from these 19 lectures the School of Spiritual Science to help and to teach the students how to work more deeply with these three beasts. So I said I joined the School of Spiritual Science in 1995, so that was quite a long time ago now, nearly 30 years. And I'm still continually working on these. I still work on the 19 mantras. And I still meditate on them very deeply. I still work on them. I do artwork around them. I try and understand them. And I try to bring in my clarity to overcome doubt. I try to bring in my self-love to overcome self-hatred. And I certainly try and bring courage over fear. And sometimes I fail and sometimes I don't fail, but it's a continual journey. But when I study and have a deeper understanding of these three beasts of humanity through the thinking and the feeling and the willing, I'm more educated to understand it. I have less fear around it. I have less doubt around it. I have more love for it because I've studied it for, nearly 30 years. So I have a good insight into it. So I would challenge you to maybe have a little bit of a look around the three beasts and your own doubt, your own clarity, your own self-hatred, your own self-love, your own fears and your own courage. And you can do some journaling around it. You can do some writing around it. You can do some personal spiritual development around it. If you're open to it, contact me and do some work with me, for some weeks or some months or even years, whatever it takes, whatever you feel like you want to do the journey. But I feel this is some of the most important work on the planet right now, because these three beasts are everywhere. Everywhere. Look at the media. Go and watch the news at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., morning or night, and start to look at where doubt can be planted. You start to doubt whether it's safe to walk the streets anymore because of all the crime that's thrown on the screen continually, the youth crime, the shooting crimes, the robberies. So one starts to doubt whether it's safe to go outside or not. But where can you find that clarity of purpose to say, I am going to stand up against this. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to find ways to overcome that doubt. Doubting myself in terms of my own beauty because I'm bombarded with this idea that I've got to look better, smell better, taste better. So we start to doubt ourselves. So we have to find that inner clarity that I am a good man, I'm a good woman, I'm a good being. I am beautiful. I am enough. We've got to stop that doubt, which ties into the hatred. I've got to stop hating myself. I am okay. I'm good enough. I am intelligent. I do feel okay about myself, and find that self-love. Because once again, if you look out there in the media, in the advertising world, there's a lot of force against not loving ourselves, to have that self-hatred, self-loathing. It's huge, it's massive. And then the fear, well, you can see that for yourself every single day in the media, everywhere. Fear, 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 particularly the last 3 years, with the COVID story across the planet, the fear propaganda, the fear campaign was probably the biggest fear campaign ever thrown against humanity, ever. The whole world, the whole globe was in a grip of panic, a grip of fear. COVID, 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 COVID. The fear was huge, huge. Anxiety rates went up. You know, suicide went up. It was incredible. People got really scared, really scared. Families broke apart, friendships broke apart, businesses broke apart. So to find that courage was really, really, really tough going in the last 3 years, really tough. Just look around yourself, look around your friends, your family, your businesses. For those that stood with a bit more courage, what it took. The campaign against the anti-vax was huge. What courage did it take to say no? Huge. I won't get political on this, but sense it for yourself. Feel it for yourself. Doubt, hatred or self-hatred, because we can hate others too. It's not just about self-hatred. We can hate others. Instead of loving somebody, we can hate somebody quite easily. We get into antipathy instead of sympathy very easily. In fact, we do it every single day when we meet people. Our natural reflex, instead of the fight, flight, freeze, is we go into sympathy when we warm to somebody, or we go into antipathy where we pull away from people. And usually that's a reaction. Sometimes it's a reaction of self-preference and safety. But sometimes it's just built-in habits because they look a certain way. Might be a different race, a different color, a different religion. So the hatred's already set. And as soon as we meet that being, that person, we've already got something set up in our mind, in our soul, where we have a hatred for them, where we have a dislike for them, based on their religion, their color, their creed. It's very sad that humanity has got to that. So we've got to try and find that self-love. It takes a lot of work. So I just want to bring us down into the thinking, feeling, and willing space. And I want to talk about something I do with my clients and my students and myself called my VPA, my vision, plan, and action. And I use this a lot with nearly all my therapeutic and coaching work. We create the vision, then we do the plan, then we do the action. So let's move through this as a demonstration. And I'd encourage you and invite you to join me in this and take this away as an exercise for yourself to work on in all areas of your life. So all you've got to remember is VPA, vision, plan, action. Am I putting that into place in my life? So let's begin with thinking of an idea, which is a visualization. We visualize it in our mind. It's, remember, it's come from the cosmos, down from the spheres, down from the word, down from the vibration, into the mind. And once it hits the mind space, the mind isn't cognitive, the mind is visual. It's not cognitive, it's visual. The brain is the cognitive, the mind is the visual. Where we, if you close your eyes for a moment, first thing you usually do is feel and sense and see. Some people are more clear visual, some are clear sentient, they feel it rather than see it. But it's still connecting to that vibration or that word of something that's being delivered from the cosmos. So we start to conceive the thinking process, we visualize it, we see it in our mind. And let's say we want to write a poem. So we pick up a pen, we've got a paper, and we go, okay, I'm going to write a poem, and I want to write a poem about an animal. And we just close our eyes for a moment, and next thing we know, we visualize a rabbit. We see it, see the little bunny rabbit. So we go, okay, I'm going to write a poem about a rabbit. Now, where did that come from? Where did that come from? We start with this idea of writing a poem, and suddenly the rabbit pops up in our mind, and there it is. It's in front of us, and we see it. And now we're with the rabbit. So next we start to plan it. So we've done the visualization of the rabbit, and we start to plan. We think and we feel into it. We sense what that poem is going to sound like. How long is it going to be? Is it a rhyming poem? The rabbit met a cat, and they sat together on the doorway, on the yellowing mat. So I just made that up. Where does that come from? Where does that come from? It's the ultimate question. Where do thoughts and ideas come from? And it's not the brain. We don't think things in the brain. It's from the mind, from the cosmos. I really want you to understand the separation of the physical brain and the more out of body mind and then the cosmos. So you can make up a poem in a moment. Where does it come from? That muse, where does it drop in? So then we start to plan it. I'm going to plan my verse, plan the characters, put everything into place. Is it a long poem, short poem, sad poem, a happy poem? So we plan it to some degree. And then we take action. We get that will. We pick up the pen. I do a lot of writing courses with writers. I've published 3 books and I've been co-published in several others. And it takes will to write a book. It takes will to publish a book. It takes a will to get the book out in the marketplace. It takes a lot of will, a lot of time and energy and will. And I say to writers, if you want to start writing a book, first step, you've got to pick up the pen. You've got to pick up the pen, metaphorically, because some people like to type their stories. But pick up the pen and then you start to write. You engage the will. And then you write. The rabbit met the cat. And they sat on the doorstep on the yellowing mat. First line. And while they were sitting, they fell asleep. And when they awoke, the food was gone. It had been stolen by a big grey rat. I just made that up on the spot. All honestly, I haven't got anything written down. That was purely just allowing the process, allowing the muse to drop in, being open to all that drops in. All that drops in. And it's fun. You can have so much fun with it. Particularly with rhyme. Rhyme's easy. You might get a little bit stuck occasionally, have to go through the alphabet and find a word to match. But if you're just open to it, you'd be amazed. I wrote my first novel, published that nearly 3 years ago now, and called 2084, which is like a sequel to George Orwell's 1984. And writing that was just a download, just being open, building the characters, building the plot, building the story. It was just about just dropping in and being open to the cosmos and the word and allowing it to come through my mind. And then sometimes it felt like my fingers were not fast enough on the keyboard, keeping up with the imagery that was coming forward. So I'd have to stop and take notes and catch up, because it was like I was on high speed cosmic energy while I was writing some of those chapters. It was quite incredible. So we have the vision, the V, then the P, the plan, then we have action, VPA. And you can do this, and what I've written here, what other areas of life can you and I improve by using the VPA process, the vision, planning, action process? Because it works for everything. Works for everything. If I'm doing a bit of a business rehash, which I'm currently doing at the moment, I'm using the VPA process. I'm visioning what I really, truly want and putting the plans, and then I will take action to put that into place, because I'm having a bit of a reshift, bit of a reshift. And also, if you go to my website, adrianhanks.com, and go to the shop, you can download the free journal that's got the 10 life aspects in it. That really helps with this process too. You can do your journaling every evening, and you can do the journaling to get a sense of where you are physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and that's 6 other life aspects I work with. And this will help you with the thinking, the feeling, the willing, the vision, the planning, the action. It'll get you to understand yourself more fully in how you live your life every single day, which is really important. And then, of course, you can engage with a coach or a therapist like myself to take you and support you on that journey, to get you over the humps, to challenge you, to encourage you, to inspire you, to bring your personal and spiritual life into more alignment. As we suggested, it's not easy. It's not easy to do, but you can do it if you engage that will, if you engage with your thinking and engage with your feeling. Because one without the other does not really work. Does not really work. And I want to share a quote with you here from Rudolf Steiner. A healthy life So let me start again. A healthy social life is found only when in the mirror of each soul, the whole community finds its reflection. And when in the whole community, the virtue of each one is living. And I get you to read that for yourself. I think it's beautiful, really beautiful. In my soul is reflected my whole community. And in my community, the virtue of each one of us is reflected back. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thought that one can drop into in a meditation. Where am I in my healthy social life? Am I reflected in my community safely, in an understanding way? And are my virtues met in the community? And do the community reflect back my virtues? And do I live up to my virtues? It's a challenge. I know I don't always live up to my virtues. I get challenged by them. I make mistakes. But when we can be held in the community and supported in the community to make those errors and learn from those errors, that's a true community. True, true, true community. So thinking, feeling, and willing, the threefold human being, that was the journey that I've just shared with you. And I hope you've taken a few things on board to bring into your own life for your own personal and spiritual development. And please, if there's anything from this that you want to ask, any questions, share some insights, or connect with me to maybe further your journey, then please do so. And you can do so by going to adrianhanks.com and you connect with me through there. So thank you so much again. Thank you so much again for sharing this journey with me. I've certainly enjoyed sharing this with you. And I look forward to sharing lots more with you in the very near future. Thanks again. See you.